The emergency lights flashed red across Kepler Station as another report came in from the war zone. Admiral Thexvar watched the holographic display with growing concern. Another 3 billion souls lost when the Thanari bioships consumed the outer colonies of Rigel 7. The Zephyrian counterattack had been swift and brutal, cracking 2 Thanari hive worlds with their reality-bending weapons. 3 years of war had turned a quarter of the galaxy into a graveyard. The Zephyrian Empire and the Thanari Collective, 2 of the most powerful civilizations in known space, were tearing each other apart. What started as a border dispute over mining rights had exploded into total war. Neither side would back down. Either side could win. How many more systems can we lose before this spreads to Council space? Asked Counselor Vextar, her blue skin pale with worry. The tall, slender woman represented the Altarian Republic, one of the founding members of the Galactic Council. Admiral Thexvar's 4 arms gestured helplessly at the tactical display. At this rate, the fighting will reach the neutral zone within 6 months. Both empires are calling up their reserve fleets. They're preparing for one final battle that will decide everything. The council chamber fell silent. 47 species had joined together to maintain peace in the galaxy. For 3,000 years, they had prevented wars like this through careful diplomacy and economic pressure. But the Zephyrians and Thanari were too powerful, too proud, and too angry to listen to reason. "We need a mediator," said High Counselor Morden, his ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries. The elderly Corvin had served on the council longer than most species had been spacefaring. "Someone both sides will trust. Someone with no stake in the outcome." "Who?" Vextar asked. "We've tried sending our best diplomats." The Zephyrians read their minds and accused them of bias. The Thanari's collective intelligence overwhelmed our negotiators with psychic pressure. Every major species in the council has trade agreements or military treaties with one side or the other. Thexvar pulled up a star chart showing the galaxy's political divisions. Red zones marked Zephyrian space, green showed Thanari territory, and blue indicated council members. Small yellow dots scattered throughout represented minor species, young civilizations with limited space travel and tiny territories. "What about one of the newcomers?" the Admiral suggested. "The Villani just achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Or perhaps the Jorthan Collective." Morden studied the display carefully. His eyes stopped on a small cluster of yellow dots in what humans called the Orion Arm. "What about these ones?" "The humans?" A junior aide quickly accessed the files. "Homo sapiens from the planet Earth. They achieved spaceflight 150 years ago. Current territory includes 12 star systems, mostly focused on scientific research and colonization. Population approximately 40 billion across all worlds. Military capabilities," Vextar asked. "Limited. Small patrol fleets for asteroid mining protection and piracy prevention. No major warships detected. Their largest vessel is classified as a heavy explorer, roughly equivalent to our light cruisers." Thexvar's antennae twitched with what might have been amusement. "They're barely more advanced than the species we grant observer status. Why would either empire listen to them?" "Exactly," Morden said, a slight smile crossing his weathered features. "They're completely harmless. No ancient grudges, no territorial ambitions, no military threat to either side. The Zephyrians won't see them as potential enemies. The Thanari Collective won't identify them as competitors for resources. The idea took shape as the council discussed it. Humans were young, inexperienced, and naive about galactic politics. They had no powerful allies and no hidden agendas. Their small size meant they posed no threat to anyone. Most importantly, they were completely neutral in the current conflict. Their records show they've settled internal conflicts through negotiation many times, the aide reported. They have something called the United Nations that has prevented major wars on their homeworld for over 2 centuries. Send them a message, Morden decided. Frame it as an honor. The first time a newly discovered species has been asked to mediate a galactic crisis. Appeal to their desire to prove themselves worthy of council membership. Captain Sarah. Jen was reviewing mineral surveys from the Kepler belt when the priority communication alert sounded aboard the exploration vessel Endeavour. The message bore the official seal of the Galactic Council, causing excited murmurs throughout the bridge crew. "This is unprecedented," said Commander Rodriguez, Chen's second in command. "The Council has never directly contacted a frontier colony before." Chen opened the transmission with trembling hands. The holographic image of Counselor Vextar appeared. speaking in perfect English learned from Earth's cultural broadcasts. Greetings, people of Earth. I am Counselor Vextar, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. We come to you in a time of great crisis, seeking assistance that only your species can provide. The message explained the war between the Zephyrian Empire and Thanari Collective in simple terms. Billions were dying. Ancient civilizations faced extinction. The galaxy teetered on the edge of chaos that could consume everything. We have observed humanity's remarkable ability to resolve conflicts through peaceful means, Vextar continued. Your species' fresh perspective and lack of involvement in galactic politics makes you uniquely qualified to serve as neutral mediators. This would be an unprecedented honor, the first time a newly contacted species has been entrusted with such responsibility. Chen felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. Earth had dreamed of joining the galactic community since first contact. This was their chance to prove humanity belonged among the stars. The Council formally requests that Earth send diplomatic representatives to Kepler Station within 3 standard weeks. We understand this is short notice, but time is critical. Every day of delay costs more lives. The transmission included detailed information about both warring species, their histories, territories, and the roots of their conflict. Chen studied the files with growing amazement. The Zephyrians could manipulate space and time itself. The Thanari had turned biological engineering into an art form. Both civilizations were older than human recorded history. How are we supposed to mediate between gods? Rodriguez wondered aloud. Chen forwarded the message to Earth immediately. The response came back within hours. A unanimous decision from the United Earth government. Humanity would answer the call. Dr. Marcus Webb received the appointment as Earth's chief negotiator. A career diplomat with experience in corporate mediation and international relations, Webb had spent the last decade studying alien cultures through the few council databases Earth could access. He was calm, intelligent, and absolutely determined to succeed. This is our moment, Webb told his carefully selected team as they prepared for departure. Humanity gets one chance to prove we belong in the galaxy. We can't afford to fail. The diplomatic vessel Harmony launched from Earth's orbital shipyards 3 days later. It was humanity's finest ship, sleek, fast, and equipped with the best technology Earth could provide. Compared to the massive dreadnoughts of the warring empires, it looked like a child's toy. But Webb wasn't worried about appearances. He carried something more powerful than weapons or armor. He carried humanity's greatest strength, the ability to find common ground between enemies, to build bridges where others saw only walls. The journey to Kepler Station took 2 weeks through hyperspace. As they approached the massive diplomatic facility, Webb's team got their first real look at galactic civilization. Ships from dozens of species filled the docking bays. Some looked like living creatures, others appeared to be made of pure crystal or metal. The diversity was overwhelming. Remember, Webb told his people as they prepared to disembark, we're not here to impress anyone. We're here to save lives. Stay humble. Listen carefully and don't let them intimidate you. The airlock opened and humanity stepped onto the galactic stage for the first time. None of them realized they were about to make history in ways they never imagined. Kepler Station stretched across 50 kilometers of space, a massive wheel spinning slowly to provide artificial gravity. As the human diplomatic vessel Harmony approached the docking bay, Dr. Marcus Webb pressed his face to the viewport and felt his breath catch in his throat. Ships from across the galaxy filled the station's harbors. Crystalline Zephyrian vessels that seemed to bend light around their edges. Living Thanari bioships that pulsed with organic rhythms. Sleek council cruisers that hummed with barely contained energy. And scattered among them, representatives of dozens of other species Webb had only read about in briefing files. Look at the size of that thing, whispered Lieutenant Sarah Park, Webb's security chief, pointing to a Zephyrian dreadnought. The ship was nearly 2 kilometers long, its crystal hull shifting through colors that hurt to look at directly. And that one's moving, added Dr. James Carter, the team's xenobiologist, watching a Thanari vessel that seemed to breathe. Organic passages opened and closed along its surface like massive lungs. Commander Rodriguez guided Harmony into the assigned docking bay, following traffic control instructions transmitted in 17 different languages. The human ship looked tiny compared to the alien vessels around it. Several docking workers, tall gray-skinned beings from the Tau Ceti system, stopped their work to stare at the newcomers. First time seeing humans up close, Webb observed. Let's give them a good impression. The airlock connected with a soft hiss. Webb straightened his formal diplomatic uniform and checked his translation device one final time. The technology was borrowed from the Council, a gift to help new species communicate. He hoped it would work better than Earth's own attempts at universal translation. The doors opened to reveal Counselor Vextar waiting with a small honor guard. The tall blue-skinned woman smiled warmly as Webb stepped forward. Ambassador Webb, welcome to Kepler Station. I am Counselor Vextar. On behalf of the Galactic Council, thank you for coming. Webb bowed slightly, remembering the briefing files on Altarian customs. The honor is ours, Counselor. Earth is grateful for this opportunity to serve the cause of peace. As they walked through the station's corridors, Webb marveled at the incredible diversity around him. A group of insectoid beings with rainbow wings chattered in musical tones. Massive bear-like creatures lumbered past carrying diplomatic pouches. In one corner, several species that seemed to be made of living metal stood in perfect silence. The station houses permanent representatives from all 47 council member species, Vextar explained. During this crisis, we've also welcomed observers from nearly every known civilization. Everyone wants to see how this conflict resolves. They passed through several security checkpoints, each one scanning for weapons, biological threats, and psychic interference. Webb's team submitted to every procedure without complaint, though he noticed many aliens studying them with obvious curiosity. Forgive the stares, Vextar said quietly. Most species here have never seen humans before. You're something of a novelty. We understand, Webb replied. We're just as curious about everyone else. Their quarters were in the diplomatic section, a comfortable suite with artificial gravity set to Earth normal. The rooms were designed to accommodate various alien physiologies, with adjustable atmosphere, lighting, and temperature controls. Wall screens displayed real-time updates from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian delegation occupies the eastern wing, Vextar explained, pointing to a station map. Prince Krythak leads their negotiation team. He's young by their standards, only 800 years old, but very influential in the Imperial Court. And the Thanari? Webb asked, Western Section. Queen Mind Zessica speaks for their collective consciousness. She represents the thoughts and desires of over 4 trillion individual Thanari across their empire. Webb studied the briefing materials his team had prepared during the journey. The Zephyrian Empire controlled nearly 300 star systems, their technology based on manipulating space-time itself. They could fold distance, slow time, and even create pocket universes for manufacturing and storage. The Thanari collective was equally impressive, but in different ways. Their biotechnology had reached levels that seemed like magic. They grew their ships rather than building them, modified their own bodies for different environments, and shared thoughts across vast distances through quantum-entangled neural networks. Both civilizations have been spacefaring for over 10,000 years, Dr. Carter noted, reading from his tablet. They're not just ancient, they're practically gods compared to us. Gods don't need mediators, Webb reminded his team. They asked us here because sometimes an outside perspective can see solutions that insiders miss. The next morning, Webb's first official meeting was with High Counselor Morden. The elderly Corvin received him in a formal chamber decorated with artifacts from across the galaxy. Morden himself was impressive, nearly 3 meters tall, with silver skin and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Ambassador Webb, Morden said, his voice carrying harmonics that the translation device struggled to process. You must understand the magnitude of what we're asking. These 2 empires have been enemies since before your species developed agriculture. Their hatred runs deeper than oceans. We've studied the historical files, Webb replied. The conflict started over mining rights to the Altair system, but the real issues go much deeper. Indeed. Cultural differences, territorial expansion, religious disputes, trade disagreements, they've been building toward this war for millennia. Only mutual exhaustion has brought them to the negotiating table. Morden activated a holographic display showing the war zone. Red and green markers indicated battle sites, with casualty figures that made Webb's stomach turn. Entire planets had been sterilized. Star systems lay empty and lifeless. 3 billion Zephyrians dead, Morden continued. 5 billion Thanari consumed by their own bioweapons when they malfunctioned. 12 neutral worlds caught in the crossfire and completely destroyed. The numbers are beyond comprehension. How can we possibly succeed where the Council's own diplomats have failed? Lieutenant Park asked. Because you're not us. Morden smiled sadly. Every Council species has some connection to this conflict. Trade agreements, military treaties, historical debts. We all have reasons to favor one side or the other. But humanity is completely neutral. You have no stake in the outcome except peace itself. That afternoon, Webb received his first glimpse of the opposing delegations. The Zephyrian team moved through the station like living artwork. Prince Krethak stood nearly 4 meters tall, his crystalline body shifting through deep purples and blues that indicated calm concentration. His advisors followed in perfect formation, their psychic abilities allowing them to communicate without words. The Thanari delegation was equally impressive, but in a completely different way. Queen Mind Zessica appeared to be a single entity, but Webb knew she was actually a collective consciousness inhabiting multiple bodies. Her primary form was insectoid, with compound eyes that could see across multiple spectrums and mandibles that clicked in complex rhythms. Look at their escort ships, Commander Rodriguez pointed out, studying the docking bay displays. Those Zephyrian cruisers, our sensors can't even properly measure them. They seem to exist in multiple dimensions at once, and the Thanari bioships are regenerating damage while we watch, Dr. Carter added. That one lost an entire section to combat damage, but it's already growing back. Webb felt the weight of impossibility settling on his shoulders. How could humanity, barely a century and a half out of their birth system, mediate between civilizations that could reshape reality itself? We're not here to match their technology, he reminded his team. We're here to find common ground. Every species, no matter how advanced, wants some of the same basic things: security, prosperity, a future for their children. The opening ceremony took place in the station's Great Assembly, a massive chamber that could hold representatives from every known species. Webb's team took their assigned seats in the center, literally between the Zephyrian and Thanari delegations. As the formal presentations began, Webb realized that everyone in the room was watching them. Some faces showed curiosity, others skepticism, and a few displayed what could only be described as pity. The humans were clearly seen as naive children attempting to solve problems far beyond their understanding. Prince Krethak's opening statement lasted 3 hours and covered territorial disputes dating back 8,000 years. Queen Mind Zessica's response addressed biological incompatibilities and resource conflicts with mathematical precision that would have impressed Earth's best computers. Webb listened to everything, taking careful notes and asking for clarification when needed. His team remained alert and professional, despite the obvious condescension from many observers. They're treating us like pets, Lieutenant Park whispered during a break. Cute little mammals trying to play with the big boys. Let them, Webb replied quietly. Underestimation can be an advantage. While they're dismissing us, we'll be finding the real solutions. As the first day of negotiations ended, Webb felt both overwhelmed and determined. The task ahead seemed impossible, but humanity had overcome impossible odds before. They just needed to find the right approach. 6 days of negotiations had achieved nothing but louder arguments and deeper resentment. Dr. Marcus Webb sat in his quarters, reviewing his notes with growing frustration. Every attempt at compromise had been met with suspicion. Every suggestion for peace had been torn apart by ancient grudges that predated human civilization. They don't want peace, Lieutenant Park said, pacing across the room like a caged animal. They want total victory. Both sides are just here to look reasonable before they finish destroying each other. Webb rubbed his tired eyes. The translation device gave him constant headaches, and the stress of mediating between two godlike civilizations was wearing him down. There has to be something. Some common ground we haven't found yet. Dr. Carter looked up from his xenobiology reports. I've been studying their cultural files. The Zephyrians believe the universe has a natural order that must be preserved. They see the Thanari's biological modifications as corruption of that order. Meanwhile, the Thanari view adaptation and change as the highest form of existence. To them, the Zephyrians are stagnant and dying. Philosophical differences we can work with, Webb said. But when I suggested they could coexist by taking different territories, Prince Krethak accused you of not understanding the spiritual significance of contested star systems. Commander Rodriguez finished. And Queen Mind Zesika calculated that human mediation had a 0.01% probability of success. Webb was about to respond when emergency alarms began blaring throughout the station. All communication screens lit up with priority alerts from the war zone. A Zephyrian strike force had attempted to destroy a Thanari nursery world. The attack had failed, but the biological weapons released in response had sterilized 3 Zephyrian colony systems. 12 billion dead in the last 6 hours, Webb read from the casualty reports. While we've been talking, they've been killing each other. The next morning's session opened with Prince Krythak's formal accusation of war crimes. The tall crystalline being stood at the center of the chamber, his body pulsing with angry reds and oranges as he spoke. The Thanari Collective has violated every law of civilized warfare. His translated voice boomed across the assembly. Their bioweapons consume not just soldiers but entire ecosystems. They are a plague that must be stopped before they devour the galaxy. Queen Mind Zesika's response was immediate and devastating. Multiple bodies of the collective consciousness moved in perfect synchronization as holographic displays filled the air around them. The images showed Zephyrian planet crackers in action. Massive weapons that literally split worlds apart at the molecular level. The hive mind presents evidence of systematic genocide, her harmonized voices declared. 17 nursery worlds destroyed. 400 billion young consumed by crystalline fire. The Zephyrians seek not victory but extinction of our species. The accusations flew back and forth, each more horrific than the last. Ancient battles, broken treaties, war crimes that stretched across millennia. Webb tried repeatedly to call for order, but both sides ignored him completely. Perhaps if we focus on the current situation rather than historical grievances, Webb began. Prince Krythak turned toward him, his crystal form shifting to deep purple, a color Webb's briefing files identified as contempt. Ambassador Webb, your species has existed in space for barely a century. These conflicts began when your ancestors were still learning to use fire. What could you possibly understand about the complexities involved? The prince speaks truth, Queen Mind Zesika added, her compound eyes reflecting Webb's image in thousands of fragments. The hive mind calculates human military capacity at 0.003% of either our forces. Your suggestion of enforcement mechanisms is mathematically impossible. Laughter rippled through the chamber, not from the Zephyrians or Thanari, but from the council observers. High Counselor Morden looked genuinely sorry for Webb, while other species representatives didn't bother hiding their amusement. I wasn't suggesting military enforcement, Webb said, struggling to maintain his diplomatic composure. I was proposing neutral buffer zones monitored by council peacekeepers. With what authority? Krythak demanded. Your tiny fleet? Your 12 systems? You speak of guarantees you cannot provide, of enforcement you cannot achieve. This is why children should not mediate between their elders. Queen Mind Zesika's form shifted as new information flowed through the collective consciousness. Long-range sensors detect mobilization of Zephyrian reserve fleets. 300 vessels including 7 reality manipulation dreadnoughts. Combat probability calculations indicate preparation for final offensive. Because you have activated your own swarm fleets, Krythak replied coldly. 800 bioships emerging from your nursery systems. Ships the size of small moons, armed with weapons that can consume matter itself. The argument escalated beyond anything Webb had witnessed before. Zephyrian psychic abilities began affecting the station's electronics, causing lights to flicker and gravity to fluctuate. Thanari pheromone weapons triggered automatic quarantine protocols as evacuation alarms sounded. Enough, Webb shouted, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Krythak's crystal body had turned deep red, the color of absolute fury. The Thanari plague spreads across the galaxy like a cancer. We will cauterize this infection once and for all. The collective grows tired of crystalline arrogance, Zesika's unified voices declared. The hive mind calculates Zephyrian civilization probability of survival at 0%. Both delegations began moving toward the exits, their escorts forming protective formations. The careful diplomacy of 6 days collapsed in minutes as ancient hatred boiled over. Wait, Webb called desperately. We can still find a solution. There must be some compromise. Prince Krythak paused at the chamber's entrance, his form shifting to the deep purple of pity mixed with contempt. Ambassador Webb, Your efforts have been quaint. But this is beyond your understanding. Your species controls a handful of systems around an unremarkable star. You have no concept of the forces at work here. Your people number in the billions, Queen Mind Zessica added, her collective consciousness speaking with mathematical certainty. We number in the trillions. Your largest warship would not qualify as a patrol craft in our fleets. This conflict will be decided by powers you cannot comprehend. The chamber emptied, leaving Webb's team alone among the abandoned negotiation tables. The holographic displays still showed tactical readouts from the war zone. 2 massive fleets converging on neutral space for what would likely be the final battle. 30 years, Dr. Carter said quietly, staring at the fleet movements. That's how long our best analysts estimate it will take either side to recover from this war. 30 years of galaxy-wide chaos while they rebuild. If there's anything left to rebuild, Commander Rodriguez added grimly. Those weapons they're deploying, some of them can destroy entire star systems. Webb slumped in his chair, feeling the weight of failure crushing down on him. Humanity's first chance to prove themselves on the galactic stage had ended in disaster. They had been dismissed as insignificant children playing at diplomacy. We should evacuate, Lieutenant Park suggested. Both fleets are moving toward this sector. If fighting breaks out near the station... No, Webb said firmly. We stay until the last possible moment. Maybe there's still something we can do. He activated his personal communicator and sent a priority message to Earth. The transmission would take several days to reach home, but he needed to report their failure. Humanity had reached for the stars and fallen short. What Webb didn't know was that his message would never reach Earth. Not because of distance or interference, but because Earth already knew exactly what was happening at Kepler Station. Admiral Elena Vasquez read the tactical display with professional calm as her flagship emerged from hyperspace. Around her, 2,000 ships of the Terrasol Defense Fleet materialized in perfect formation. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving evacuation broadcasts from Kepler Station. Multiple alien fleets converging on this position. Understood, Vasquez replied, checking the mission chronometer. Send a message to Ambassador Webb. Tell him his backup has arrived. The fleet's arrival had not gone unnoticed. Across Kepler Station, alien sensors detected the massive human force appearing in their midst. Emergency sessions convened as military analysts tried to understand what they were seeing. That's impossible, High Counselor Mordoon whispered, staring at the tactical displays. They said 12 systems, a few patrol ships. How? On the Zephyrian dreadnought Eternal Radiance, Prince Krythak felt a chill run through his crystal form. His empire's best scouts had never detected this fleet. Where had humanity been hiding such force? Aboard the Thanari bioship Infinite Hunger, Queen Mind Zessica's collective consciousness processed the implications. 2,000 warships, technology that matched or exceeded their own. The humans had not been honest about their capabilities. As the realization spread through both fleets, the confident advance toward final battle began to slow. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had been playing a very different game all along. Webb received Admiral Vasquez's message in his quarters as he prepared for evacuation. He read it 3 times before the words sank in. The first sign something had changed was the silence. Kepler Station's evacuation alarms had been wailing for hours as staff prepared for the approaching battle between the Zephyrian and Thanari fleets. Then suddenly every alarm stopped at once. Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his emergency packing as Lieutenant Park burst into his quarters. Her face was pale, eyes wide with something between shock and disbelief. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, activating the wall display. Long-range sensors just picked up something impossible. The tactical screen showed the local star system with 2 massive fleets converging on Kepler Station. 300 Zephyrian vessels in perfect crystalline formation, 800 Thanari bioships that pulsed with organic life, and now appearing from the direction of Earth's distant colonies, something that made both war fleets look small. "How many ships is that?" Webb asked, counting the new contacts as they materialized from hyperspace. 2,000 confirmed, Dr. Carter replied, joining them at the display. Maybe more. They're still dropping out of FTL. Webb stared at the screen in confusion. According to every intelligence report, every diplomatic briefing, every piece of information the Council had shared, Humanity's entire space fleet consisted of perhaps 50 ships. Exploration vessels, cargo haulers, and a handful of patrol craft to deal with pirates. There must be some mistake, he said. Run the identification codes. Commander Rodriguez was already working at his console. IFF signatures confirm they're human vessels, sir. Terrasol Defense Fleet under the command of Admiral Elena Vasquez. Terrasol Defense Fleet, Webb repeated. I've never heard of Admiral Vasquez. I've never heard of a defense fleet that size. The human ships were nothing like the vessels Webb knew from Earth's catalogs. These were warships in every sense of the word, sleek predators bristling with weapon systems he couldn't identify. Massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Council archives. Carrier vessels launching fighter wings by the thousands. Sir, Lieutenant Park said quietly, I think we've been lied to. Across the station, alien observers were having similar reactions. In the Council Command Center, High Counselor Mordun watched the tactical display with growing alarm. His aide, a young Altarian technician, kept rechecking the sensor readings. The computers must be malfunctioning, the aide insisted. These readings show human vessels with displacement masses exceeding Council dreadnoughts. That's impossible. Mordun's ancient eyes had seen many impossible things become reality. Run full spectrum analysis. I want to know exactly what we're looking at. The results were disturbing. The human ships weren't just larger than expected. They were incorporating technology that shouldn't exist. Energy signatures matched Zephyrian spacetime manipulation systems. Bioneural networks similar to Thanari collective consciousness architecture. Weapons that combined principles from a dozen different species. How? Mordun whispered. How did they acquire this technology without our knowledge? Aboard the Zephyrian dreadnought Eternal Radiance, Prince Krethak stood in his command crystal watching the human fleet deploy. His psychic abilities let him sense the confusion rippling through his officers. This was not what their intelligence had predicted. My prince, his chief navigator reported, our deep scans detect space-time distortions around the human vessels. They appear to be using modified versions of our own dimensional anchor technology. Krethak's crystal form shifted to deep orange, the color of troubled thought. Modified how? Improved, my prince. The efficiency ratings are significantly higher than our current systems. The prince felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of warfare: uncertainty. The humans had somehow acquired an enhanced Zephyrian technology that was supposed to be impossible to reverse engineer. On the Thanari bioship Infinite Hunger, Queen Mind Zesika's collective consciousness processed the information flowing in from thousands of sensory organisms. The human ships registered on biological scanners in ways that defied explanation. Analysis indicates hybrid biomechanical systems, one segment of her mind reported to another. Human vessels incorporate living components derived from our own ship growth protocols. Impossible, another portion of the collective replied. Our biotechnology is species-specific. Alien nervous systems cannot interface with our growth matrices. Yet the sensor data is conclusive. The humans have successfully integrated our biological systems with their mechanical engineering. For the first time in her existence, Queen Mind Zesika experienced something approaching fear. Not of death. The collective consciousness could survive the destruction of individual bodies, but fear of the unknown, of an enemy that had outmaneuvered them completely. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, the dreadnought Retribution, watching the alien fleets with professional calm. Around her, the Terrasol defense fleet moved into position with practiced precision. Communications, open a channel to Kepler Station, she ordered. Find Ambassador Webb and let him know we're here. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, both alien fleets have stopped their advance. They're holding position approximately 1 million kilometers from the station. Good means they're smart enough to be cautious. Weapons, what's our readiness status? All systems green, Admiral. 48 dreadnoughts ready for action. 300 cruisers standing by. Carrier groups have deployed full fighter complements. We have total tactical superiority. Vasquez nodded, studying the display. The Zephyrian and Thanari fleets were impressive by galactic standards. But the Terrasol defense fleet had been designed specifically to fight enemies exactly like them. Every weapon system, every defensive measure, every tactical doctrine had been developed with these ancient empires in mind. Admiral, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a priority transmission from Ambassador Webb aboard Kepler Station. Webb's image appeared on the main screen, his face a mixture of confusion and relief. Admiral Vasquez, I'm grateful for your arrival, but I have to ask, where did this fleet come from? And why wasn't I informed? Vasquez smiled slightly. Need-to-know basis, Ambassador. Your job was to keep them talking while we got into position. Mission accomplished. Keep them talking? You mean the negotiations were a distraction? The negotiations were real, Ambassador. We genuinely hoped you could find a peaceful solution. But humanity learned long ago to prepare for the possibility that diplomacy might fail. Webb stared at her in shock. How long have you known this war was going to reach Council space? We've been tracking the conflict since it began 3 years ago. Our intelligence services predicted it would escalate to threaten neutral systems within 18 months. We've had 2 years to prepare. Intelligence services? Admiral, what aren't you telling me about Earth's capabilities? Vasquez checked her mission chronometer. Both alien fleets were beginning to request communication, probably demanding explanations for the human fleet's presence. Time to end the deception. Ambassador, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Earth's government decided it was necessary to maintain operational security, even from our own diplomatic corps. The truth, when it came, struck Webb like a physical blow. Humanity's 12 systems were just the visible colonies, the ones they allowed alien observers to see. Hidden throughout dark space were dozens of other worlds. Industrial centers, shipyards, research facilities, and military bases. We've been spacefaring for 150 years, Vasquez explained. For the last century, we've been preparing for the day we would encounter hostile alien civilizations. Every first contact protocol included intelligence gathering. Every trade agreement included technology acquisition. Every diplomatic exchange was an opportunity to learn. The Terrasol Defense Fleet was the culmination of that century of preparation. 2,000 ships built in secret shipyards using the best technology humanity could steal, buy, or reverse engineer from every species they encountered. You've been spying on the entire galaxy, Webb said, his voice barely a whisper. We've been learning, Vasquez corrected. The universe is a dangerous place, Ambassador. Ancient empires that can crack planets and devour star systems. We needed to be ready. But the Council, they offered us membership protection, on their terms, as junior partners in their system. We decided humanity deserved a seat at the table as equals. As this conversation continued, sensor operators throughout the system were confirming what their instruments detected. The human fleet wasn't just large, it was technologically superior to both warring empires. Weapons that could punch through any known shield, defenses that could withstand planet-killing attacks, faster-than-light systems that made galactic travel trivial. On Kepler Station, alien diplomats gathered in emergency session. The entire political structure of the galaxy had just shifted, and they were struggling to understand the implications. How did we miss this? Counselor Vextar demanded. Our intelligence networks span every known system. How did humanity hide an entire military-industrial complex? They used our own assumptions against us, Morden replied grimly. We saw a young species with limited territory and dismissed them as insignificant. We never looked deeper. What do they want? What are their intentions? The silence that followed Admiral Vasquez's broadcast stretched across the entire Kepler system like a held breath. For the first time in 3 years of devastating war, both the Zephyrian Empire and the Thanari Collective found themselves facing something more dangerous than each other. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in the station's observation deck, watching through reinforced transparent aluminum as the human fleet held perfect formation around them. 2,000 warships that shouldn't exist, commanded by officers he'd never heard of, protecting a negotiation he thought had failed. Sir, Lieutenant Park said quietly, joining him at the massive windows. We're receiving communication requests from both fleets. They want to talk, Webb almost laughed. 6 days of pleading, threatening, and diplomatic maneuvering had achieved nothing. Now with the Terrasol Defense Fleet holding weapons on them, both ancient empires suddenly wanted to negotiate. Put them through to the main conference chamber, he said, and send my compliments to Admiral Vasquez. Tell her I'd like to coordinate our approach. The walk to the conference chamber felt different now. Alien beings who had ignored or condescended to Webb for days now stepped aside respectfully as he passed. The Tau Ceti dock workers bowed slightly. A group of insectoid diplomats chittered nervously and fell silent when he approached. Word of the human fleet's true capabilities was spreading through the station like wildfire. Intelligence reports that had taken weeks to compile were being rewritten in hours. Every species was desperately trying to understand what this meant for the galactic balance of power. Admiral Vasquez was waiting in the conference chamber when Webb arrived. Her crisp uniform and calm demeanor, a sharp contrast to the chaos surrounding them. She was younger than Webb had expected, perhaps 50 years old, with the kind of steady competence that came from decades of military service. "Ambassador," she said, standing as he entered, "I apologize for the deception. Orders came from the very top." "How long have you known?" Webb asked, taking his seat at the negotiating table. "About the war, about this situation?" "The Defense Fleet has been tracking this conflict since the first border skirmishes 3 years ago. Our analysts predicted it would escalate beyond the ability of either empire to control. We've been positioning assets throughout the sector ever since." Webb stared at her. "Assets? How many ships do we really have, Admiral?" "Classified, Ambassador. But let's just say the Terrasol Defense Fleet represents a significant portion of our total military capability. Not the entirety of it." Before Webb could respond, the chamber's communication system activated. Prince Krethak's holographic image appeared at one end of the table, his crystalline form shifting through colors that Webb's briefing files identified as extreme agitation. "Ambassador Webb," the prince said, his translated voice carefully controlled, "I believe we may have underestimated humanity's capabilities. Perhaps it would be prudent to resume our discussions." A second hologram materialized as Queen Mind Zessica's collective consciousness-established connection from the Thanari fleet. Her compound eyes reflected Webb's image thousands of times as she spoke. "The hive mind concurs with Zephyrian assessment. Previous calculations regarding human military capacity contained significant errors. Negotiation parameters require adjustment." Webb felt a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. These were the same beings who had dismissed him as a naive child just hours earlier. Now they were speaking to him with the kind of respect usually reserved for equals. "I'm glad you've reconsidered," Webb said diplomatically. "Perhaps we can discuss those buffer zones and ceasefire terms you found so impractical yesterday." The next several hours revealed just how dramatically the situation had changed. Prince Krethak, who had been demanding total Thanari surrender, now proposed a 50-year peace treaty with clearly defined territorial boundaries. Queen Mind Zessica, whose collective consciousness had calculated human proposals as impossible, now offered to withdraw from 12 contested systems in exchange for guaranteed passage rights. "The hive mind has reprocessed available data," Zessica explained when Webb questioned the sudden change in position. "Human fleet capabilities indicate enforcement mechanisms previously thought impossible are now feasible." Admiral Vasquez had remained silent through most of the negotiations, but now she activated a holographic display showing the current tactical situation. The three fleets formed a triangle in space, with the human force positioned to intercept any movement between the other two. "To clarify our position," Vasquez said calmly, "humanity is prepared to guarantee any peace agreement reached here today. We have the capability to monitor compliance across all disputed territories and respond to violations within hours rather than months." Prince Krethak's crystal form flickered through rapid color changes. "You're proposing to police two galactic empires that have existed since before your species evolved?" "We're offering to help maintain peace," Webb corrected smoothly, "just as the Council requested when they invited us to mediate this conflict." "The Zephyrian Empire does not submit to foreign oversight," Krethak declared, his form shifting to aggressive reds. Admiral Vasquez touched a control on her command tablet. Across the system, the human dreadnoughts powered up their main weapons. Energy readings that made both alien fleet's sensors scream warnings filled space around Kepler Station. "We're not asking you to submit to anything," Vasquez said, her voice never losing its professional calm. "We're explaining the new reality. You can have peace with human guarantees, or you can continue your war with human interference. Those are your options." The demonstration lasted exactly 30 seconds before the weapons powered down. It was enough. Every military analyst in both fleets had seen readings that defied their understanding of physics. Weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand star-core temperatures, propulsion systems that bent space-time itself. Queen Mind Zessica was the first to break the silence. The collective accepts human enforcement protocols. Territorial boundaries will be respected under Terrasol oversight. Prince Krythak took longer to respond, his form cycling through colors Webb had never seen before. Finally, the crystal being seemed to reach some internal decision. The Zephyrian Empire acknowledges the new paradigm. We will accept human mediation of territorial disputes. Over the next 6 hours, a comprehensive peace treaty took shape. Territorial boundaries were redrawn with human colonies serving as neutral buffer zones. War reparations would be paid to a council relief fund administered from Earth. Both empires agreed to technology sharing arrangements that would, incidentally, give humanity access to their most advanced research. The details were complex, but the underlying reality was simple. Humanity had revealed itself as the dominant military power in the galaxy, and both ancient empires were accepting that fact. "There's one thing I don't understand," Webb said during a break in negotiations. "Why the secrecy? Why not reveal our true capabilities from the beginning?" Admiral Vasquez poured herself coffee from a thermos, a distinctly human touch in the chamber full of alien technology. "Because then it would have looked like intimidation rather than mediation. This way, both sides got to make their own choices. They chose peace because you threatened them. They chose peace because war became unprofitable. There's a difference." As the treaty negotiations concluded, High Counselor Morden arrived to witness the signing ceremony. The ancient Corvin looked older than his considerable years, clearly struggling to process the implications of what he was seeing. "How long?" he asked Webb privately. "How long has humanity been planning this?" Webb considered his answer carefully. "According to Admiral Vasquez, we've been preparing for hostile contact since we first achieved faster-than-light travel. 150 years of intelligence gathering and military development. You've been studying us, learning our weaknesses, learning how to survive in a galaxy full of species that could destroy us," Webb corrected. "The Zephyrians can manipulate space-time. The Thanari can consume entire star systems. What were we supposed to do? Trust that everyone would be friendly?" Morden was quiet for a long moment. "The Council offered you protection, membership in our organization, as junior partners, with limited voting rights and no real influence over policy." Webb met the elder being's eyes. "We decided humanity deserved better." The signing ceremony took place in the Great Assembly, with representatives from every known species watching via holographic link. Prince Krythak and Queen Mind Zessica affixed their respective forms of authentication to the treaty documents, formally ending 3 years of devastating war. But everyone present understood they were witnessing something far more significant than a peace treaty. They were watching the emergence of a new galactic superpower, one that had been hiding in plain sight for over a century. As the ceremony concluded and the fleets began dispersing, Webb received a private communication from Earth. The message was brief but carried the weight of history. "Congratulations, Ambassador. Phase 1 complete. Prepare for Phase 2, integration protocols." Webb deleted the message and looked out at the stars. Humanity had spent 150 years preparing for this moment. The day they would reveal themselves as equals among the ancient powers of the galaxy.